Larissa stood by the window, absent-mindedly tracing her finger along the foggy glass. It seemed to her that life was finally starting to get better. Outside, wet March snow was falling, but in the new apartment, it was warm and empty. Boxes with belongings were piled up in the corner. There was almost no furniture, just a folding bed and a chair. But it was still better than cramped living in rented corners after the divorce. The doorbell rang so unexpectedly that Larissa flinched. Who could it be? New neighbors, or perhaps the realtor forgot to clarify something. On the doorstep stood Valentina Sergeevna, her former mother-in-law. She critically surveyed the empty hallway and, without waiting for an invitation, rudely pushed her way inside. "Varya, where did you get so much?" the former mother-in-law said, planting her hands on her hips and glaring at Larissa. "Valentina Sergeevna, I'm Larissa," she corrected the woman tiredly, as she had done hundreds of times over 5 years of marriage. "You still mix me up with Dima's first wife." "What's the difference?" The mother-in-law waved it off. "Answer me. Where did you get the money for such an apartment? My son lives in a one-room flat with his parents, and you don't work anywhere. And suddenly you buy a 2-room apartment in a new building." Larissa crossed her arms over her chest. Inside, everything was boiling, but she tried to stay calm. "Actually, I do work." "It's none of your business, Valentina Sergeevna." The older woman interrupted. "You can't earn enough for bread with that. And here." She took a step deeper into the apartment, scrutinizing it. 5 million at least. Larissa involuntarily bit her lip. The apartment was indeed expensive, far more than she could afford with her modest earnings. But she wasn't about to tell her mother-in-law the whole truth, a truth even Dima didn't know. "I didn't invite you," Larissa said quietly. "Please leave." "You won't kick me out until you explain," the mother-in-law retorted, plopping down onto the only chair. "Dima needs to know." "What? Did you find some rich guy while you were still married? And hid the money from him?" "I knew it." "Stop it." Larissa trembled with the unfair accusations. "The apartment came from my grandmother. She died, you understand? She left me an inheritance. That was only part of the truth, a tiny fraction of it. Her grandmother had indeed passed away 3 months ago, but there had been no apartment. Just an old box with letters and one secret that had turned Larissa's life upside down." Valentina Sergeevna squinted suspiciously. "You're lying. Your grandma lived in a village, in a shack. I saw the photos. Where would she get millions?" Larissa turned to the window. Outside, large flakes of wet snow continued to fall. Suddenly, she caught herself realizing she was no longer afraid of this woman. Before, every visit from her mother-in-law had been a trial. Constant nitpicking, comparisons to Varya, hints that Larissa wasn't good enough for her son. Now, all that was behind her. "Grandma had savings," she lied, turning back to the mother-in-law. "She saved up her whole life, from her pension, 5,000. Valentina Sergeevna snorted. "You can't save up for an apartment like this with that." "Valentina Sergeevna," Larissa said, with a firmness that surprised even herself. "This is none of your business. Dima and I got divorced officially 6 months ago." "Exactly." The mother-in-law leaned forward. "You got divorced, and suddenly you have money. Something's fishy here. Maybe you stole something from Dima, or siphoned it off his card little by little." Larissa was exhausted. She had so hoped to start a new life without all these scandals and suspicions. Her mother-in-law had always considered her a gold digger after her son's money, though it was the exact opposite. Dima was the one constantly borrowing from her until payday and often forgetting to pay her back. "Your son never had that kind of money," Larissa said quietly, "and you know it perfectly well. And how do you know how much he had? Maybe he was saving, and you didn't know. And now those savings." The doorbell rang again. Larissa flinched. That was the last thing she needed right now, another unexpected guest. On the doorstep stood her ex-husband, Dmitry Pavlovich. He looked just as he had 6 months ago, slightly disheveled in a dark blue sweater, with tousled hair and a bewildered expression. "Mom, you're here?" He looked at Larissa in surprise. "Sorry, I should have guessed where she went. She saw your new address in the documents on the table, and—" "Dima!" The mother-in-law appeared in the hallway. "Good thing you're here. Did you know your ex bought an apartment? Where did she get the money?" Larissa watched as Dima awkwardly shifted from foot to foot. He always got flustered when he had to take someone's side, especially between her and his mother. "Mom, what does it matter? It's her business." "What does it matter?" Valentina Sergeevna threw up her hands. "You lived together for 5 years, and suddenly she has millions. Doesn't that bother you?" Maybe she was hiding them from you all this time. Dima sighed wearily and cast an apologetic glance at Larissa. Sorry, she's just worried. Don't apologize for me. The mother-in-law raised her voice. Better ask her where she got the money. It's not your business, Mom. But it is my business. You're my son, and if your ex was hiding something, maybe that money's yours too. Larissa felt her head start to spin. 3 months ago, her life had changed completely. First, there was her grandmother's funeral. Then the box with letters, the meeting with Andrei Viktorovich, and the secret she'd uncovered. Larissa, can I talk to you? Dima suddenly asked, stepping toward her. Alone. Valentina Sergeevna threw up her hands indignantly. What secrets could there be here? Mom, wait in the car, please, Dmitri said firmly. Larissa raised her eyebrows in surprise. Usually, he didn't dare contradict his mother. The mother-in-law muttered something unintelligible but, to Larissa's shock, headed for the door. 5 minutes, and you'd better figure it all out, she snapped as she left, slamming the door behind her. Silence settled over the apartment. Dima shifted awkwardly, staring at the bare walls. Sorry about Mom. She saw your address on the table, and, well, sorry. Larissa crossed her arms over her chest. What do you want, Dima? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that always betrayed his nervousness. Once she had found it endearing. Listen, I really don't care where you got the money for the apartment. It's your business. Thanks for understanding, Larissa replied dryly. Is that all? No, I need to pick something up. Remember that box with my documents? There were diplomas, certificates, and, well, I need them for a new job. Oh, so that's it. Dima hadn't come to defend her from his mother or to apologize. He just needed something. It's in your parents' garage, she replied. I brought all your stuff there a month ago. Your mom took it. That box isn't there. I checked. Larissa, don't start. Dima made a pleading face. I searched everywhere. Maybe you accidentally took it? There were important papers in there. Larissa sighed. Even after the divorce, he kept shifting responsibility for his problems onto her. How many times had she searched for his lost things, sorted his documents, reminded him of meetings? 5 years of marriage had made her more of a mother than a wife, 3 times over. If the box isn't in the garage, then you took it earlier, or, she paused, suddenly realizing, your mom, she could have taken it. Why would she need my documents? Dima frowned. I don't know. Ask her yourself. And now please leave. I have a lot to do. Larissa closed the door behind her ex-husband and leaned against it with her back. Her heart was pounding somewhere in her throat. 5 years of life with a man who never learned to make decisions on his own. 5 years of trying to prove to his mother that she was good enough for her son. She slowly slid down the door and sat on the floor. In the empty apartment, every sound echoed. Larissa hugged her knees and closed her eyes. 3 months ago, she had buried her grandmother, the only truly close person she'd had. A week after the funeral, she found an old wooden box among her grandmother's things, filled with letters. Letters from a man named Andrei. They spoke of love, unfulfilled hopes, and a son he had never seen. Larissa remembered how, with trembling hands, she laid out the yellowed sheets on the table. Calligraphic handwriting, faded ink, dates from 50 years ago. She wrote to the address, not really expecting a reply. To her surprise, a response came from Andrei Viktorovich Tarasov himself. Meeting him turned her life upside down. A tall, distinguished man with noble gray hair and strikingly familiar eyes. Eyes like her father's, whom she had lost in childhood. Andrei Viktorovich turned out to be her grandfather, the father of her father, whose existence no one in the family had even suspected. He had spent his whole life searching for his son, but her grandmother, hurt long ago, had hidden the child and never told him about his real father. When Andrei Viktorovich learned he had a granddaughter, he broke down in tears right at the cafe table where they met. Larissa remembered how awkward it felt. A dignified man in an expensive suit wiping tears with a pristine white handkerchief, while other patrons glanced at them curiously. I searched for your father for years, he said then. And I found you, my only blood relative. The apartment? Don't argue with an old man, he smiled then. I couldn't give your family anything for too long. Let me do something for you now. She agreed, but on one condition. No one could know about him. Larissa didn't want anyone thinking she was after a rich relative's money. The phone's ring pulled Larissa out of her memories. She got up from the floor and walked to the bag lying on the windowsill. The screen displayed Andrei Viktorovich, as if he sensed something. Hello, she answered, her voice betraying a tremble. Larissa, good afternoon. How's the settling in? His voice carried genuine care. Little by little. I washed the windows today. She tried to sound cheerful. Did something happen? He asked perceptively. In the 3 months they'd known each other, he'd learned to pick up on the slightest shifts in her mood. My ex-mother-in-law came by with accusations. Oh, really? Steel notes crept into his voice. And what did she want? To find out where I got the money for the apartment. And what did you tell her? Andrei Viktorovich asked calmly. That my grandmother left me an inheritance. She didn't believe it, of course. Silence hung on the other end of the line. Larissa knew her grandfather didn't approve of lies, but in this case, she hadn't had much choice. Come over for dinner tonight, he finally said. We need to discuss something. Something serious? Larissa asked, alarmed. No, don't worry. Just a conversation. Olesya will make your favorite cabbage pie. Olesya was Andrei Viktorovich's housekeeper, a kind middle-aged woman who had treated Larissa with unusual warmth from the first day. All right, I'll come by 7, Larissa agreed and said goodbye. She put the phone down and glanced at the clock. There was still enough time before evening to unpack at least some of her things. Andrei Viktorovich's house was in an upscale suburban cottage community. Every time she approached the massive gates, Larissa felt a wave of nervous excitement. A 2-story mansion, a well-kept garden. Even in winter, it looked pristine. It all felt so far removed from her usual life. Olesya greeted her in the entryway with a warm smile. Larissa Sergeevna, take off your coat, come in. Andrei Viktorovich is in his study and asked you to stop by when you arrive. Larissa climbed to the 2nd floor and knocked on the heavy oak door. Come in, came her grandfather's voice. He was sitting at his desk, sorting through some papers. Seeing his granddaughter, he set them aside. Well, hello, beautiful. After dinner, they sat in the spacious living room. Andrei Viktorovich gazed thoughtfully out the window, stroking his beard. Larissa knew that gesture. Her grandfather was about to say something important. I think it's time we stop hiding our relationship, he finally said. Larissa blinked in surprise. Why? Today's incident with your ex-mother-in-law is just the beginning. There will be questions, gossip. He shifted his gaze to his granddaughter. I have nothing to be ashamed of about my family, and I want everyone to know. Larissa nervously fidgeted with the edge of a napkin. I don't want people thinking I'm using you. People will always have something to think, Andrei Viktorovich smiled gently. The question is whether we let their opinions affect our lives. But all these talks, rumors. Larissa shook her head, already imagining what Valentina Sergeevna would say when she found out. And what can she say? Her grandfather leaned back in his chair. That you have a rich grandfather? What's shameful about that? Larissa lowered her eyes. Of course, there was nothing shameful in it, but after the divorce, she had so badly wanted to start fresh, without accusations, sidelong glances, or whispers. I want you to take part in managing the company. Larissa looked up, stunned. Me? But I don't know anything about construction. I'm a translator. Everything can be learned, her grandfather smiled. And we'll start right now. He walked to a small table by the window and picked up a folder with documents. These are shares in my company, he said, handing the folder to Larissa. 30%. They're yours now. Larissa's breath caught. But this? I can't accept this. You can and you will, Andrei Viktorovich said firmly. You're my only heir. Who else if not you? But we've only known each other for 3 months, Larissa objected quietly. You barely know anything about me. I know the important things. Her grandfather sat beside her and took her hand. You're smart, honest, hardworking. You'll manage. And I'll help. Larissa stared at the folder, not daring to touch it. It was too much. The apartment was one thing, but shares in a company? Think about the future, her grandfather added softly. About your own future. I need time. Larissa stood up from the couch and paced the room. It's such a responsibility. I'm not sure I'm ready. We have plenty of time, Andrei Viktorovich nodded. But with one condition, we'll decide today. No more secrets. Tomorrow I'll call. She imagined herself under the scrutiny of dozens of cameras and felt nausea rising in her throat. She had never liked publicity. And if I refuse? She asked quietly. Andrei Viktorovich looked at her attentively and sighed. I won't lie. I'll be upset, but I won't force you. Just think, wouldn't it be easier to live without hiding? Wouldn't it be nicer to answer questions directly, without evasions? Larissa sat on the armrest of the chair. Of course, he was right. She was suffocating under the need to invent tales about her grandmother's inheritance, fearing she might slip up. But the prospect of stepping into the spotlight, taking on responsibility for a huge business, it scared her just as much. "What if I can't handle it?" she said quietly. "Then you can always sell the shares," Andrei Viktorovich shrugged. "But I believe in you. You'll manage." She looked at the folder lying on the table. In it was her future. Unexpected, frightening, but possibly exactly what she needed. "All right," she finally said. "But with one condition: no press conferences. Just an official statement from the company, without my involvement." Her grandfather smiled. "Deal. For starters, that'll be enough." He walked to the bar and pulled out a bottle. "I think we have something to celebrate." When the glasses were filled, Andrei Viktorovich raised his. "To a new beginning." They clinked glasses, and Larissa took a sip. The champagne pleasantly tickled her throat. A new beginning. She could already feel her life changing, and it both scared and inspired her at the same time. On the way home, Larissa reflected on the evening. Her grandfather was right. Hiding their connection further was pointless. Sooner or later, the truth would come out anyway. So wasn't it better to control the process? The next morning began with a phone call. "Dima." Larissa stared at the screen in surprise, debating whether to answer. Curiosity won. "Hello." "Larissa, hi." Her ex-husband's voice sounded unusually agitated. "Have you watched TV today?" "No." "What's on?" "They're talking about you." "Well, not exactly you, but..." Larissa's heart sank. Had her grandfather gone ahead and held a press conference without her knowledge? "What exactly are they saying?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "That you're the granddaughter of Andrei Tarasov, the owner of Tarasov Group." "Is it true?" Larissa covered her eyes with her hand. So it had happened. "From where?" "Just an official statement." "Yes, it's true," she replied quietly. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "And how long have you known?" Dima finally asked. 3 months. After Grandma's funeral, I found letters, and well, it's a long story." "So when we were still married, you didn't know?" Larissa caught a strange note in his voice. Not quite relief, but something close. "No, Dima, I didn't know." "Got it." He coughed awkwardly. "Listen, Mom's here next to me. She wants to talk to you." "No," Larissa blurted out before she could stop herself. "Sorry, but I have no desire to." But it was too late. The commanding voice of Valentina Sergeevna was already in her ear. "So that's how it is. And here I was wondering. You could have told us." Larissa gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "Told you what, exactly?" "That I found a grandfather I didn't know existed my whole life?" "That's personal, Valentina Sergeevna. But we were family. 5 years we were family." Her mother-in-law's voice dripped with offense. Larissa emphasized. "Not anymore." "But we could." "No, we can't," Larissa cut her off firmly. "Dima and I are divorced. We have no kids. Nothing ties us together anymore." "How cold you are," Valentina Sergeevna huffed. "And yet we could have helped with those shares, with the business. Dima has an economics degree, he could." "Stop." Larissa nearly choked on the audacity. "Are you serious right now? Yesterday you accused me of every sin imaginable, and today you're offering Dima to manage my shares. Why so harsh? I just wanted what's best. Dima's out of work right now, and you've got such opportunities opening up." Larissa let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. "Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Sorry, I have to go." She hung up and tossed the phone onto the bed. A tremor ran through her body. Not even a day had passed, and her ex-relatives were already circling. She wondered what Valentina Sergeevna would have said if she'd known the truth earlier. Probably wouldn't have rushed the divorce so much. The phone rang again, Andrei Viktorovich's number. "Sorry," her grandfather said instead of a greeting. "I promised no press conferences, but someone from the office leaked the info early. Now journalists are camped out at the gates." "What gates?" Larissa asked, confused. "Yours. I've sent security to you. They should be there soon. Don't go out for now." She rushed to the window and pulled back the curtain. 2 cars with TV channel logos were parked by her building's entrance. "Oh God," she groaned. "What do I do now?" "Nothing," her grandfather replied calmly. "The security won't let anyone into the building. By evening, their interest will die down. If you want, you can wait it out at my place." Larissa sighed. "This won't last long, right?" "They'll lose interest in a couple of days," Andrei Viktorovich said confidently. "Besides, next week we've got the opening of a new residential complex. Everyone will shift focus to that." "Do I need to be there?" she asked warily. Only if you want to, her grandfather laughed. I won't torture you. I'll give you time to get used to your new role. After the call with her grandfather, Larissa felt better. After all, it was just heightened attention. It would pass. She spent the day at home, settling into the apartment, ignoring calls from unknown numbers per her grandfather's advice. By evening, her phone was buzzing with messages. Former colleagues, university classmates, even distant relatives she hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered she existed. Hey, is it true you're Tarasov's granddaughter? Larachka, we're so happy for you. It's been ages. Maybe we should meet up soon. Reading these messages, Larissa felt a strange mix of irritation and bitter irony. Where were all these people when she was battling depression after the divorce, living in a tiny rented room, taking any translation gig just to pay the bills? The phone rang again. This time, it was a familiar number, Olesya, her grandfather's housekeeper. Larissa Sergeevna, good evening. Andrei Viktorovich asked me to let you know there's an important meeting at the company office tomorrow at 2 p.m. He'd like you to be there. What kind of meeting? Larissa asked on edge. The board of directors. They'll be discussing the company's plans for the next 5 years. Larissa felt her stomach tighten. The board of directors. She couldn't even imagine how to behave at such an event. Do I absolutely have to be there? She asked hesitantly. Andrei Viktorovich said that since you're now a shareholder, your presence is desirable, Olesya replied gently. But if you're not ready— No, I'll come, Larissa said decisively. At 2 a.m., she realized with horror that her wardrobe had nothing suitable for a meeting with the board of directors of a major company. After much deliberation, she settled on a strict navy blue dress she'd worn to a job interview. It looked formal enough, but now it felt somehow cheap. Larissa had never thought much about the cost of her clothes before, but now she worried she'd look out of place among successful business people. The doorbell rang precisely at noon. From Andrei Viktorovich, the driver in a formal suit introduced himself. On the way to the Tarasov Group office, Larissa nervously fidgeted with her bag's strap. What if the directors didn't take her seriously? What if she embarrassed herself by not understanding basic things? The company's office was in a modern business center in the heart of the city, a massive glass building stretching 30 floors high, inspiring awe. Welcome. Andrei Viktorovich is waiting for you in the conference room on the 8th floor. In the elevator, she tried to calm herself, breathing deeply. It's just a meeting, nothing scary. She'll just listen and learn. Andrei Viktorovich greeted her in the hallway. Here's my beauty, he said, hugging his granddaughter. Don't worry, today you'll just meet everyone, nothing complicated. He led her into a spacious room where several people were already seated at a long table. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce my granddaughter, Larissa Sergeevna. Everyone present stood up. Larissa felt her cheeks flush with a blush. She nodded and smiled awkwardly. Please, sit next to me, Andrei Viktorovich said, pointing to the chair on his right. The next 2 hours passed in a haze. Larissa listened to reports about financial performance, expansion plans, and new projects. She didn't understand most of it, but diligently noted down key points to figure out later. To her surprise, no one looked at her with disdain. On the contrary, every speaker tried to explain complex matters in simple terms, often addressing her directly. Larissa Sergeevna, as you understand, this project has strategic importance. After the meeting, Andrei Viktorovich personally introduced her to each member of the board of directors. Well, not too exhausting? Her grandfather asked when they were alone in his office. Honestly, my head's spinning, Larissa admitted. So much information at once. I don't understand half the terms. You'll learn, Andrei Viktorovich said confidently. I started from scratch too, you know. What matters is the desire, and I see you have it. He walked over to a cabinet and pulled out a small box. This is for you, a gift for your first day at work. Inside was an elegant leather planner with gold embossing. Alesti, what's this? Larissa asked, surprised. Your initials, Larissa Sergeevna Tarasova. But I use my mom's last name, she said, confused. Her grandfather smiled slyly. Think about it. That evening, back home, Larissa stood in front of the mirror for a long time, repeating her new name, Larissa Tarasova. It sounded unfamiliar, but right. It was her real last name, the one her father should have carried. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts, but Larissa, tired of ignoring calls, decided to answer. Hello. Larissa, it's Varya. Varya Mironova. Larissa froze. Dima's first wife, the the one her mother-in-law constantly confused her with. Varya, how did you get my number? From mutual acquaintances. We need to meet. Why? Larissa asked warily. There's something to discuss about Valentina Sergeyevna and some documents. They met the next day in a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. Varya had hardly changed since their last meeting 5 years ago. Still the same slender blonde with attentive gray eyes. Only the faint wrinkles at the corners of her eyes betrayed that time hadn't stood still. Thanks for coming, Varya said when they placed their order. I'll admit I'm curious, Larissa replied. We haven't spoken since your divorce from Dima. What's changed? You've changed, Varya said with a slight smile. Or rather, your status. Tarasov's granddaughter, that's serious. Larissa tensed. If you're about to offer some deal or help with managing the company. No, Varya shook her head. I came to warn you. About what? Larissa frowned. Varya leaned closer. About Valentina Sergeyevna. She's not as simple as she seems, and she's very, very persistent when it comes to money. I've already figured that out, Larissa said dryly. She's offered to help Dima and me manage shares, and that's just the beginning. Exactly, Varya nodded. When Dima and I divorced, I got a small inheritance from my aunt. Valentina Sergeyevna tried to contest the divorce retroactively, so Dima could claim part of the money. Seriously? Larissa asked, stunned. But you were already divorced. Exactly, Varya said. But that didn't stop her. Now imagine what she might scheme with your millions. Larissa thoughtfully twirled her cup. Thanks for the warning. But why help me? We barely know each other. Varya shrugged. Female solidarity. She smiled. Honestly, I just know what it's like to be Valentina Sergeyevna's daughter-in-law. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. You mentioned documents? Yes. Varya opened her bag and pulled out a folder. Remember that box he asked you about recently? How do you know that? Larissa asked, surprised. Valentina Sergeyevna called me, looking for some papers for Dima. She thought they might be with me. Can you imagine? After all these years. And they're with you? Larissa pointed at the folder. No, of course not. But I found something in my old things. Varya opened the folder. These are copies of property documents, 3 apartments, all registered to proxies. Larissa looked at the papers skeptically. That can't be. They always lived modestly, constantly complaining about money. Oh, they're masters at playing poor, Varya smirked. But in reality, she's quite well off. 1 apartment's rented out, she lives in another, and the third. Her sister used to live there. The one who supposedly died. Varya faltered. From an illness. Larissa didn't understand where this was going. Her sister's alive, Varya said quietly. She's living in a remote village where Valentina Sergeyevna sent her after taking her apartment. How do you know this? Larissa asked, doubtful. I found out by chance, Varya said, looking away. In short, she's not someone to mess with. Be careful, especially now. Larissa leaned back in her chair, trying to process it all. Of course, her mother-in-law had always seemed overly controlling, even greedy, but to this extent? Thanks for the warning, she finally said. I'll be cautious. One more thing. Varya lowered her voice. She might try to pass Dima off as your close relative, say, a cousin or something. Why? To gain access to the money through family ties. She's already tried something similar with my aunt. On her way home, Larissa mulled over the strange meeting. Could she trust Varya? On one hand, she had no reason to lie. On the other, it sounded almost fantastical. Was Valentina Sergeyevna really capable of such schemes? At home, a new surprise awaited, a box from a courier. Inside was a latest model laptop and a note from her grandfather. For work. See you at the office tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Time to learn. Larissa smiled. How quickly life changes. Just 6 months ago, she was an unhappy housewife, dependent on a perpetually dissatisfied husband, then a lonely divorcee counting pennies. And now, her phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's important. Larissa sighed. Her ex-mother-in-law clearly wasn't wasting any time. I'm not meeting with you, Dima, Larissa said when she called her ex-husband back. If you have something to say it now. Laris, don't be like that. His voice carried a hint of offense. I just wanted to congratulate you. It's such luck to find a rich relative and what? She asked sharply. Well, and something else, he hesitated. You see, I'm having some small problems with work right now. And you probably have connections now. Dima, Larissa interrupted him tiredly. We're divorced. I have no obligations to you. But we were close for 5 years together. Doesn't that mean anything? Larissa closed her eyes. 5 years. 5 years during which she never once heard a word of support when she couldn't find a job. 5 years when every purchase she made was criticized, and her dreams were called foolish. 5 years next to a man who never truly became close to her. No, Dima, she said firmly. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Sorry. Hanging up, Larissa felt an astonishing relief, as if she'd shed a burden from her shoulders. For the first time in a long while, she was truly free, from toxic relationships, from others' expectations, from the need to adjust and please. She walked to the window. The snow had stopped, and in the clearing sky, journalists didn't stop trying to get an interview. Nothing important. She quickly got ready, putting on the most formal dress she had. I'll need to update my wardrobe, she thought, for the first time not feeling guilty about the idea of extra spending. Leaving the building, Larissa saw a car with a driver. Her grandfather had taken care of her again. On the way to the office, she admired the city, which seemed to look different today. The same streets, the same buildings, but now not as a person trying to survive, but as someone with prospects and opportunities. At the office, Andrei Viktorovich himself greeted her. Happy first workday, granddaughter. Happy first workday. Larissa smiled back. Her grandfather took her through the floors, introducing her to departments and key employees, then showed her a new office, a spacious room with panoramic windows and stylish furniture. Do you like it? Very much, Larissa answered sincerely. But I haven't earned such an office yet. I don't know anything. You'll learn, Andrei Viktorovich said confidently. You have everything ahead of you. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You know, I dreamed my whole life of finding my son. I didn't manage to. But I found you, and that's the greatest treasure. Larissa hugged her grandfather, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. The treasure wasn't in the money or the shares. It was in this astonishing bond they'd found in each other, in this new, unexpected life full of possibilities. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. 5 years later, the large conference hall of Tarasov Group was filled with people. Journalists, partners, employees, all gathered for a special event. Larissa Sergeyevna Tarasova stood on stage next to a tall man with noble gray hair. Despite the added wrinkles, he stood tall. Today is a special day, his voice, amplified by the microphone, carried through the hall. Exactly 5 years ago, my granddaughter Larissa joined the company, and today I am proud to announce my decision to pass the position of CEO of Tarasov Group to her. The hall erupted in applause. Larissa smiled, looking at her grandfather. Over these years, she had learned so much. Starting as an assistant, she gradually mastered every aspect of the business, from finances to strategic planning, and now she was ready to take the helm. Thank you all for your trust, she said into the microphone. I promise to live up to it. After the formal part, there was a reception. Larissa mingled with partners, accepted congratulations, and discussed future projects. Suddenly, among the guests, she spotted a familiar face, Varvara Mironova, in an elegant suit, chatting with someone. Over the past 5 years, they had become true friends. After that conversation in the cafe, Larissa had offered Varya a job in the company's legal department. Her warning about Valentina Sergeyevna had proven timely. The ex-mother-in-law had indeed tried through the courts to claim that part of the inheritance belonged to Dima as her former husband, but thanks to solid legal defense, the lawsuit was dismissed. Congratulations, Madam CEO. I still can't get used to that title, Larissa admitted. It sounds too grand. But it suits you perfectly, Varya said, raising a glass of juice. To new beginnings. That evening, Larissa returned to her apartment. Not the small 2-room place in a new building, but a spacious penthouse in the city center she'd bought 3 years ago. She kicked off her high heels and walked to the kitchen. From the window, there was a stunning view of the evening city. Larissa poured herself some tea and sat at the kitchen table. On the fridge hung a photo of her at the opening of a new residential complex, the most successful project of Tarasov Group in recent years. It was there that she had first proven herself as a leader, making significant changes to the concept that made the complex incredibly popular. Next to it was another photo, Larissa surrounded by children from a sponsored orphanage. The charitable foundation she had started 3 years ago helped orphan children get an education and find their place in life. Her phone buzzed with a message from Alesia. Andrei Viktorovich is feeling great and asked me to tell you he's proud of you. Larissa smiled. 2 months ago, her grandfather had undergone a serious operation. The doctors insisted on rest, and he reluctantly agreed to retreat to his country house, leaving the company in his granddaughter's hands. Now that his health had improved, they decided to make this arrangement official. Finishing her tea, Larissa went to her study and turned on her laptop. In an archive folder, she found an old photo, her and Dima on their wedding day. Strangely, she now looked at it without bitterness. The past no longer caused her pain. After that legal battle, Dima had tried to contact her several times, first angry and threatening, then asking for forgiveness and suggesting they start over. He can't come to terms with missing out on such a golden ticket, she thought. According to rumors, Dima had moved to another city and was working as a mid-level manager in a trading company. The morning of the new day began with Larissa's traditional run in the park. The fresh air, the greenery of the trees, the rising sun, all of it charged her with energy. 5 years ago, she couldn't have imagined starting each morning like this. Sports had entered her life along with her new responsibilities, helping her stay in shape to cope with everything. After her run, she stopped by her grandfather's place. Andrei Viktorovich was waiting for her on the terrace, set for breakfast. "How did you sleep on your first night as CEO?" he asked slyly as Larissa sat beside him. "Honestly, I barely slept," she admitted. "I kept thinking about the new project in Sochi. It's a complex site, lots of nuances." "You'll handle it," her grandfather said confidently. "I believe in you." They ate breakfast, discussing future plans. Despite his formal retirement, Andrei Viktorovich remained Larissa's main advisor and was always ready to help. After breakfast, they strolled through the garden. Her grandfather leaned on a cane but moved confidently. "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" he asked suddenly. "About how amazingly life turns out. I lost my son but found a granddaughter. You lost your father but found a grandfather. And now, together, we're continuing the work I started half a century ago." Larissa took his arm. "That's right. That's how it should be. Family is what matters most." Speaking of family, Andrei Viktorovich gave his granddaughter a sly look. "When are you going to introduce me to that young architect, Mikhail? I think his name is?" Larissa laughed. "Grandpa, we're just working on a project together." Of course, he winked. "I just noticed how he looks at you during meetings." Larissa shook her head, but the smile didn't leave her face. Perhaps her grandfather was right. Life went on, opening new doors and opportunities, and she was ready to step toward the future, confidently and with an open heart.